to another cross-border talk, which will be a little bit more special as cross-border talks is a Poland-based media, and we're going to discuss the new government in Poland. Donald Tusk was just sworn in. We know the his team of ministers, and we are going to discuss about the process of change of power and what to expect from the new government with Małgorzata Kulbaczewska-Figat, who joins us from Katowice.
Hello.
Małgorzata, let us start with this thing. There was a really dramatic change in the last days, dramatic events in the Polish parliament. And maybe we could start with this. How exactly was the process of change of power? How Morawiecki fell? How Tusk rose? And what was the Kaczynski's view on all that?
Okay, so what happened on Monday in the Polish parliament on was unexpected and expected at the same time. I mean, everybody more or less knew that Morawiecki's government that was formed after the election has no chance to survive because it would not get enough votes to get a pass the confidence vote positively. But on the other hand, nobody expected Yaroslav Kaczynski to jump to their podium and burst out in anger, saying that Donald Tusk is a German agent. Yes, he literally said that in the very final part of the discussion after Donald Tusk arrived at the podium too, saying that was grateful to Polish people who voted for his party, for his program, and he also referred to the rumors around him being a pro German politician, assuring everybody that he was actually a Polish patriot. So Kaczynski felt obliged to jump in and say, Mr. Tusk, no matter whom your ancestors were, you are a German agent. This can give us an idea in what atmosphere the new government will start ruling and will continue to rule for the subsequent years. On one hand, we have the Tusk camp, the liberal camp, the pro European camp, the democratic camp, which is now determined to clean up the mess left by the Law and Justice Party, who are going also to seek political revenge against law and justice politicians. And on the other hand, we have the National Conservative camp, which is, well, also determined to be a very resolute opposition to Tusk and to try to regain power as soon as possible. It is also very important that Tusk said in his first words after Morawiecki fell as a prime minister and Tusk's candidature was accepted by the parliament. Then Tusk greeted all the people who voted against the darkness and against evil. So it would mean that there are millions of evil people in Poland and that those who voted for law and justice are not considered just opponents, but representative of evil forces. Well, this is not good for any democracy, even though we admit that law and justice rule was marked by authoritarian tendencies, by non democratic tendencies, and that a lot of words that were said against Tusk and his camps were also disgusting while peace was still in power.
Okay, before asking you about the program of the Tusk government, what will be its relation with the Law and Justice Party, given that the President Duda is from the Law and Justice and he has right to veto, and as I understand, the ruling coalition has no sufficient members of parliament to overcome a possible veto by Duda. So, would there be some kind of cohabitation between elements of law and justice, for example, the president and Tusk, or would there be really fierce competition and war from now on?
Yes, you are right to say that the new ruling coalition has not enough votes to overcome the veto. This is exactly the case, and both sides are bracing for war. There will be no constructive cooperation because the sides don't trust each other. And as I said, law and justice is just waiting for an opportunity to be back in power. And Duda will be trying to show as much as possible that Tusk's actions are actually detrimental to the majority of Polish people and that his reform proposal must be stopped at any cost. However, the Tusk government is quite aware of the fact that radical moves would be stopped by Duda. Actually, there was a lot of speculation in the government before the government was formed what law proposals can actually be pushed forward through parliament not to risk being rejected by Duda. Therefore, while Tusk promises he would, for example, advocate the women's rights issue and stand for the right to abortion, it is highly unlikely that such a bill will be passed through parliament because everybody knows that Duda will then veto it. Another question is, are the differences between the parties forming the coalition? It is actually quite a wide coalition which is united mainly by the willingness to remove law and justice from power. And already in the process of forming the government, it became clear that, for example, some of the social democratic proposals will not be accepted by the Third Road conservative coalition, which is an ally of Tusk. So the Social Democrats, as the weakest part of the coalition, will have to give up some of their ideas. So, but coming back to the president, it will be a very tough cohabitation. It will be very fierce rivalry, and I really don't expect any move from law and justice towards a constructive cooperation with Tusk. We need to remember that it is still Law and Justice, which is the biggest single party in Poland, who got the biggest number of votes. And they are still hoping that Tusk's coalition will not survive the whole term, and that in 2 years, for example, we will have early elections when everything can happen.
Okay, the rule of law and justice was known for introducing some measures which increase the social base of law and justice, such as some social policies, money which are given for any child that is born. And also, they did such tax policy that encouraged small business or micro businesses. What do you expect to be the social and economic policy of the Tusk government?
Tusk is a skillful politician and he knows that revoking all the social programs that peace decreed would be really the end of his rule. And he did not come back to Poland just to be elected and then quickly removed from power. Therefore, he declared that all the programs that support families, children, pensioners, they are going to stay in place, and there will be even a new program which will be called the Active Mother, and in the framework of which women who gave birth to children and keep working will get some extra money to afford hiring someone to help with the child. Well, how much sincere is Tusk when saying that the programs are necessary and that they were a good step forward? We know that Tusk is a liberal, even a neoliberal, if you want, and that he was not an enthusiast of any kind of social policy. At least he was not when being in power in Poland for the previous 2 terms. So keeping the programs in place is basically a move that he does just not to lose his regained popularity too quickly. There are other moves that can make us wonder whether neoliberalism is not coming back very fast. The first is that Tusk declared to open up a fiscal council, which is going to advise him on fiscal policy, which probably means that there will be no future social programs and there will be no moves taken to get more money into the state's budget. I am saying this because there were already many hints from people around Tusk saying that after peace government, the state budget is in a very bad state. A lot of money has been spent for no reason, and the new government will need to save, which was debunked by a group of economists who published an open letter saying that claiming that our budget was so damaged was actually not true. Well, you asked me also what did I expect from social economic policy. I need to mention that in his first among his the first promises delivered by Tusk today. He also mentioned moves towards the companies and towards people employed by the state. The second part is important because people employed by the state, starting from administration workers and finishing with the teachers, have not received a substantial raises for years, and Poland is already suffering from shortage of skilled people wishing to take these posts, namely because of bad earnings. So Tusk claimed that the teachers would get 30% raise next year, and everybody else employed in the state administration can count on 20% raise. While it sounds pretty impressive, we must not forget that there is still inflation running in Poland, and so the real amount of the pay rise will be definitely less important for these people and their households. And definitely these promises need to be delivered so that we can speak of a positive social impact. As for the small companies, Tusk so far promised some things that could sound well, but are not that impressive when you will look closer at that. One of his flag proposal is to free the small business from taxes and for social fees for 1 month in the year, but this will be connected with an obligation not to do any economic activity over this month. So basically, while this is presented as a free time that the states give to the small business person, it actually means that for a month you can't earn money. So another proposal he says he did in the campaign, he didn't repeat it today, was that we need low taxes, which is basically something that everybody in Poland keeps saying. Perhaps apart from the Social Democrats, we have this consensus in the political class that taxes must be low and simple so that there is economical growth. How much it is valid, our listeners may decide for themselves.
Okay, the return of Tusk was lauded in the wider European Union, Brussels, and other countries because it is expected that the relations with Western Europe will get much better, and Tusk is has been, or in fact, the Polish government has been asked for a long time to undone a judicial reform which it did to make the judicial system once again independent. And some funds, which are, if I understand correctly, from the Recovery and Resilience Fund, will be unfrozen if this reform is done. What do you expect to happen in the relations between the Tusk government and the European Union, or in fact, the Western Europe?
Well, while I am not sure if Tusk will deliver any of his pro social promises, I can say with a degree of certitude that indeed our relations with Brussels will be better under his rule. Tusk is determined to have Poland again as a respected international player whose voice is heard, whose voice is important in European as well as regional formats, and yeah, bringing the money from the resilience fund, the recovery plan, to Poland is was one of his key promises in this electoral campaign. Well, he said he would get the funding very quickly, basically, that he would come to Brussels as soon as he is the prime minister. He would have a couple of talks, and immediately the money is released. Well, while it would not be that simple for sure, I can assure you that Tusk will definitely do everything to have this money unblocked. This is what is their voters waiting for. His voters in the business, but also the voters in local administration, in the regions, but also a lot of people in Poland who felt really bad with our country being kind of stigmatized in the European community. What is going well, Tusk is definitely going to try to keep as good relations with the West, with the European Union as possible. He is also he put Radosław Sikorski as his sorry, he put Radosław Sikorski as his foreign minister, which also says a lot about his plans. So definitely we can forget about Polish sovereignty that we saw under Law and Justice. There will be no more conflicts with the European Court of Justice. There will be no more attempts to make a show of force in Brussels. And definitely there will be no more criticism against the European Union that wants to impose some foreign values on Polish traditional people that Peace and his allies were famous for. Well, as far as the judicial reform is concerned, it is not so easy to have it undone in one day. It is not so easy to verify all the people who were promoted under Law and Justice, but here also I have no doubts that the new government will do everything to have the reform undone. This is one of the key things they promised to the voters, and this is one of the key things their voters expect from them.
Under Law and Justice, Poland was known as the champion of the Three Seas initiative and is a country which is strongly linked to Great Britain and the USA. What do you expect to happen with this tendency in Polish politics? Will the Three Seas initiative continue? What will be the relations with Ukraine, for example? And what would happen if a Republican president comes in the White House?
But there is no question right now in Poland of any substantial shift in our relations with the United States. We have based our doctrine or our defense doctrine on the alliance with the United States for decades, and I don't think Tusk has any other idea, especially that the talks of European strategic ambiguity or a kind of common strategic policy in the European Union have stalled. So definitely Poland will still be the key ally of the United States in Central Europe, and Tusk government will continue what Kaczynski started in terms of expanding the army, in terms of military spending, in terms of supporting Ukraine as well. So here I don't expect really any big changes. But in the case of the Free Seas initiative, definitely there may be a change and not a positive change. I definitely stand personally for more cooperation in the region, for building ties with the neighbors of Poland in Central Europe. And I am very sad to say that for the Tusk's cooperators, this project is the Free Seas initiative is largely seen as something that Law and Justice developed, Law and Justice invented, so therefore it is not worth a continuation. For Tusk, the place of Poland is in the West, in an alliance with Germany. Well, while Tusk is not a German agent, he is definitely a champion of very close relations between Poland and Germany and in many fields. So Tusk will want to place Poland firmly in the West, and as far as the relations with other countries in Central Eastern Europe are considered, they would not be made a priority. Perhaps Poland would like to have a role in the upcoming process of negotiations between Moldova and the European Union and Ukraine and European Union. Because there is still this thinking in the Polish political elite that we have responsibilities in the East, we are the experts in the East, and we should somehow uh, simplify the process of having these Eastern countries accepted in the European community. But this will not be a priority. Reparation of our relations with Germany and Brussels will be the priority. If something happens in Central Eastern Europe, I don't think it would be on Tusk initiative.
Okay, let's end this talk on the expectations of the new Tusk government with this question. What are the weak points which Tusk government would have? What might be test for it, or what might challenge it?
The first weak point of Tusk government is that it is a coalition government with a coalition united mainly by the willingness to remove law and justice from power. You can hardly imagine two parties more different than Social Democrats and the Third Road coalition. There are advocates of women rights, there are advocates of LGBT rights, there are advocates of some moderate social policy in the social democratic camp, while the Third Road coalition is led by a former American owned TV speaker, which is conservative, which is Catholic, which is, I'd say claiming to be European, but in fact this Europeanness that can be, for example, compared to Angela Merkel's party in Germany. And yet, these forces will need to cooperate for the next couple of years so that Tusk doesn't lose the parliamentary majority. The first test might come if the Social Democrats actually try to advance any of their proposals. And they had proposals in the campaign on housing, on women's rights, also on the very big reform of education, which was handed by Law and Justice to the most conservative politicians of that party. And there are already problems here. For neither Tusk's party nor the Third Road is very enthusiastic about investments in housing, the state investments, nor about making the education more European friendly, LGBT friendly, and generally liberal. There is already I think it is important to say that there was a huge debate even before the government was formed around who should be the Minister of Education in the new government. And while there was a very good candidate from the Social Democrats who had often hinted that her political ambition is to, namely, to be the Minister of Education, she was refused the post at the very last moment and replaced by a politician from the Tusk's coalition who is definitely not known to be an expert on education, all for the sake of not having a too radical, too left wing person in the education ministry. So these different positions in the government may prove fatal for it on one moment when they feel, for example, too self-confident and not bound anymore by the willingness to not to allow the return of law and justice. The other weak point is the social policy, because it was much easier for Tusk to refuse any kind of social policy when he was the prime minister for the previous time, because the Polish people were basically used to having no social policy. After socialism fell, we never had a pro social policy from any government. So Tusk saying that we can't afford any social spending was just continuing what others did. But now people have the comparison, and people have the comparison on two grounds. First, they see that Law and Justice actually did what they had promised to do. So Tusk cannot promise too much and then show it were just empty words. And secondly, people saw that it was actually possible to offer social spending, which was not as generous as in many Western countries, which was sometimes chaotic, but which actually changed lives of people in this country. And here I am mentioning not only the children benefit programs, but also the truly revolutionary decision of Law and Justice to make the minimal wages much higher than under Tusk. So Tusk will now have to struggle with this shadow of Law and Justice party. He won't be just able to introduce austerity immediately, and if he does, there will be always somebody in the Law and Justice ranks to remind the public that Tusk is a German agent who takes money from the Polish people to give it to someone else.
Okay, I'm aware of the great interest which the Polish elections created in Central and Southeastern Europe. A lot of Romanian liberal or other type of people were watching with great interest, and so we also continue to follow Polish developments. Thank you for this cross-border talk, and I invite all our listeners to continue to follow our stuff on various social networks such as YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, Substack, and others.